We're all looking for ways to personally grow, ways to improve and to self-develop, to increase our existence here on this earth as human beings. Well, today I'm going to share with you and my guests a 7-step plan on how to become the best version of yourself. Joining me again, we have Brother Simon, Brother Ismail. And what I'd like to start by saying is that in terms of perspective, we see things in certain ways. We have success from a worldly standpoint and ultimate success from a religious standpoint. And how do those two things merge together, or are they separate things? And are we seeing things in the wrong light?
Yeah, I think perspective getting things in the right perspective, because a lot of the time we see success is termed to be always financial, or what you own or whatever you may have. And this is looked at as success from the worldly perspective. But as we know, we even see verses in the Quran, the meaning of which that there may be something which you think is good for you, where in fact it is bad for you. And there may be something that is bad for you, in fact it is good for you. And then in the Quran, God Almighty Allah says, and indeed Allah knows and you do not know. So the reality is what may be deemed as success isn't truly success. So from an Islamic standpoint, the true success is where you're successful in this life and the hereafter. And that could be someone living a very simple life, so he may not seem to be quote unquote successful, but in reality he is successful because of the deeds that he's doing and the things that he's doing. And he has self-contentment. And they, ultimately to be content is one of the Prophet ﷺ, if I remember correctly, he said to have this contentment. This is real richness. As he said, ﷺ, peace be upon him. So it's getting the perspective of what is truly success.
Yeah, and what you should have as a goal, right? Because like you mentioned with the contentment, like isn't there a hadith about isn't there a hadith where Prophet ﷺ mentioned that if the human being, the child of Adam, would have a mountain equivalent of like gold, he would want another one. Yeah. Right? I think it's hadith, right?
Yeah. Then he said that nothing will stop his desires apart from the
soil.
The soil in his mouth, meaning when he's buried. So yeah.
So that also gives us another perspective of, if you want to attain material success, you won't be satisfied.
You'll never be satisfied.
Ever. Yeah. Never.
One of the things that, is very interesting is because we see a growth and development in this world right now in, life coaching, skills coaching, upscaling yourself. A lot of people are attending a lot of seminars. It's all about be the best version of myself and so on and so forth. And Islam definitely promotes becoming the best version of yourself. I think, as we mentioned again, it's just like trying to align the perspective. And it reminds me of a narration. We've all shared a narration. And it reminds me of a narration that I think the whole discussion is based upon, is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, was sitting one day and he was sitting with his companions, the people who were with him when this message was being delivered. And he asked them, as a man walked past, what do you think of this man? And they said, he's the most noble of us. If he speaks, he's to be heard. And if he's to be proposed in marriage, he should be married off, And this is very important because we see nowadays people who we put up in positions of success because of this kind of worldly status, right? Yeah. But then the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, was silent. And then he said, what do you think of this man that walked past, the next one? And they said, oh, well, he's, the weakest among us. And if he was to speak, no one should really pay him attention. And if he's to be proposed, then we shouldn't give him off in marriage. And he, peace and blessing be upon him, said, a world full of the first is not worth one of the second. So again, it's really putting things in perspective. We see the high flyers, the certificates, the lawyers, and X, Y, and Z as really high. Now, we're not saying that Islam doesn't promote being a lawyer or whatever else, because it does. Yeah. Indeed, God the Almighty has prescribed excellence in everything you do. So if you're going to be a doctor, be the excellent, best of doctors. But we're trying to put things in perspective, which is, it doesn't make you the best of society. you know, and you know, we often look down on others. Like, you know, the other day I was with a family member and they were looking at a dustbin man, you know, like, you know, generally they'll say like, you know, don't, you know, if you don't work hard at school, maybe you become a dustbin man. But why is that the case? Maybe that dustbin man is actually better than me and you. You understand me? So why are we always having this perception that if I dress a certain way, I look a certain way, I'm a certain individual or I have a certain position? And I think here what we're highlighting is there is room for both. There is success in the world, as you mentioned, and there's success in the hereafter, but it's about putting things in perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of people now, success is only looked at as wealth or position, materialistic things. And whenever I speak to people, I always say to them that, it's okay to have a good job, a good car, try and look good, try and keep healthy, whatever it may be, which many people take their time in doing, one or the other, or if not all of them. But the most important thing in reality is the spiritual health. And I always say to them, you know, you could be a multimillionaire, but if you have no spiritual health, in reality, you're the big loser here. And you could be the guy who lives a very simple life, just gets by, but you have the spiritual health, you're better off than the millionaire. In the big, you know, in the worldly life that we live in, it's difficult to understand how, but it's when you have like, what is the real priorities? When you put your real priorities in place and you understand, like, you start to say to yourself, like, why am I here? Is this life the main goal? Am I just here to
accumulate and spend,
you know, have children, have money, you know, as I always say, you know, you only live once, quote unquote, where in reality you don't. But you only live once in this life. So that's why you have to make the most of it. So people, if they don't ask themselves these questions, and if they do ask themselves these questions, that's where people really, and they sincerely think about it, this is where people start to think there's got to be more to life. And that's why we find those people who have attained this multi-billions, that sooner or later, if not most of them, we hear about this person committed suicide, this one's been in constant rehab for drug abuse or alcohol abuse. And you say to yourself, but why? You know, a lot of people, they turn to drugs because they're looking for happiness. They're looking for something. So this guy's a multi-billionaire. So most people would say, man, if I had £1 million right now, you know, I'll be sorted. Right? That's it. I'm so happy. So how come many of these billionaires, they're doing something else to try and attain happiness? They have all the money they need, but then whatever it may be, it could be, some of them go to some crazy steps. We can't even go down that road, but some crazy things in the search of so-called pleasure. Exactly. And I remember on one of the Arabic podcasts that I watched recently, and they had like an Arabic scholar there, and he was saying that because the people make their goal as materialistic things and following desires, getting what you want. I want it, why not? Makes me happy, why not? And he was saying how these people, that's how you see them, when they following their desires, that they may fall into like homosexuality and then they bestiality and all these kind of things. And I was quite taken back because I wasn't expecting it to come from the Sheikh. But he was saying now, how if you give in to your desires and you say, whatever makes me happy, whatever I desire, I have to fulfill it. What's the limit? He said it will never stop because after a while you'll get fed up with 3 women, 4, 5, 7. After a while, the guy becomes so messed up, he may go somewhere else, the other opposite gender or opposite species. And we look at it like, but we see it happening everywhere, don't we? We see people getting married to chickens.
I've seen someone get married to a game console, actually. Huh? Someone got married to a game console.
Well, that's a bit. But that's a bit better than marrying an animal because we know what marrying an animal entails as well. But the games console is just in the head. You know?
But you know what? It comes back to that perception and perspective that we're trying to start this whole discussion with, is that no matter what you fill your belly with, no matter how much gold or mountains of gold or whatever it is, you're always going to look for more. And that's when we say that there has to be some practical steps to success that are tangible and they benefit the soul, they benefit the mind, and they benefit your worldly life. So what are those things? I think here the viewers are probably thinking, you told me there are 7 steps to success. what we're first doing is we put out the perspective what true success really is. True success is peace of mind, contentment of heart. And that all comes down from a position of faith, belief. So there is a chapter in the Holy Quran, and it's called the chapter of the believers. And I find this very, very fascinating, because in this, God the Almighty said, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Indeed, successful are the believers. So here he's giving what success really is.
Like you could say, like the main and the beginning and the standard criteria for success is, first of all, that you are a believer.
Sahih, exactly.
That's where it starts.
That's exactly where it starts. And that's what I was going to get into, is that when I discussed this with one of my teachers, I was saying how fascinating this chapter was. He said, but do you not see that when God the Almighty said, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, the very first thing he mentions is mu'minun.
Yeah.
And we know what mu'minun means, or mu'min is someone who believes. Not a Muslim. So we say a Muslim is someone who believes in the 5 pillars and accepts them and embraces that and then starts their journey. But a mu'min has conviction. He's now understands the not only the pillars of Islam, but the pillars of Iman, and actualizes them.
It's a higher level.
It's a higher level. So successful indeed are the people who are fully, they believe. So this is the very first step to attaining real success. You need to have the correct belief system, but definitely a belief system. Because if I leave it to myself, or we leave it to my definition of success or my definition of what's right and wrong, it varies based upon culture, age, race, wherever you might be. I might say, so for me, when I was telling my story, success for me was I became an MC and an artist, and I wasn't all over the TVs or whatever, but for me that was success. I finally got to the position I was. Some might say that's very low level success, but to me that was me. I reached my level of
subjective success.
Exactly, subjective. So here we have to align it and say, no, the first step is correcting our belief and the belief system which we follow, because ultimately the one who's created the universe, the system that governs it and gives us life and causes us death, that divine being is the one who knows what success really is.
Always, I don't know if it's the correct way of thinking about it, but when you hear verses from the Quran, when Allah tells us about something, that is in fact the reality. Like there's no dispute to it. It's the objective truth. It's just as, 2 + 2 equals 4. No one can come and, say otherwise.
No, I think it feels fine.
There are some people now, unfortunately. But, because in mathematics, like, it's just an expression of truth. 2 + 2 = 4. That's it. That's truth. And also when you hear the verses of the Quran, when Allah describes and explains and give these, characteristics of a successful person, this is indeed success, objectively, right? Now, subjectively, people can say, but I can be successful without being a believer. Then you come back to, but what is success?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like Ismail mentioned, you got all these millionaires, billionaires, they are successful in the eyes of society, but you got people, they commit suicide, they go into abuse, all these stuff. Why would they do that if they were indeed successful? And that's why I think it's powerful, like you said, with the word qad in the beginning. Like really, like people can say, I'm successful, but they can never say qad, I'm successful, right? You're using the same word. But Allah uses it. Allah uses this emphasis on indeed, and then start with the believers. I think that's really like profound, like really powerful.
The same, like when I finally read this chapter, I found it profoundly, it moved me like in a very profound manner, because, as you said, we all aim for different things and we're all striving for different things. But, until you experience it, you don't really get that essence of, I've had all these things, but something was missing. We mentioned it on previous episodes. And that thing that's missing, that everybody, if they really want to sit down with themselves and be, really sincere and truthful, they're missing an element. And that element is that belief system that we have been created by Almighty God, and our purpose on this world, in this environment, definitely has more purpose than a sock, And many people say, my socks, they keep my feet warm. They, stop the odor from the shoes. But we're human beings. We don't have more purpose than a sock. So here, obviously, our purpose, we need to identify it, believe in it, and live it. And what's really interesting is, You know, that's the first step. Okay, so person attaining belief and the correct belief, not just any belief, but the correct belief and following it. And then God the Almighty, he mentions in the next verse the translation of, and they are the people who have consciousness or awareness in their prayer. You know, this is very, very interesting here, because, you know, it could have been said that they're the people who pray. In like many other places of the Quran, we have the people who pray, they establish their prayer. But here, consciousness and awareness in their prayer. I mean, if you could shed some light on why that's different to the other verses we might find.
Yeah, because I mean, you could pray and do the bare minimum, but when you're really like, the verse says, the ones who have khushu', basically, which we know is translated as humbleness, tranquility, focus, so many different words we could use for that. So, because when you're doing that, here you are like really praying, not the other person may be going through the motions and he may be fulfilling the obligation of praying, but he may not really be connecting properly with the prayer. The more you connect with the prayer, the more you connect with Allah. And the more you pray properly, you fall into that verse where Allah says that indeed the prayer protects you from evilness and lewdness and like mischief and evil. And that reminds me, and then that reminds me of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he was explaining to his companions about the 5 daily prayers. And he said to them, imagine if you have a house, and right outside your house you have a fresh flowing river, and you go into that river and you wash yourself 5 times a day. He said to his companions, will there be any dirt left? And they said, no. He said, this is the similarity to the prayer. So if you're doing the prayer properly, this is the spiritual cleansing, the removing of sins. And how to do your prayer properly is by doing it with this focus, humbling yourself, this having this khushu', in Arabic, khushu'. So this is so again, that's another way to be one of the truly successful. So if you're praying this prayer, they say you put your heart into it. We say something
that's
like,
right, yeah.
You put your heart and your mind and your soul, everything is. At that time, you're doing your best to focus on the prayer. Then you're really being successful, and you're really, you're doing you're reaching the goal of the prayer.
Yeah.
And once you reach that kind of prayer, like I said, as Allah says in the Quran, that indeed prayer, prevents the person from evil doing. So you may get someone, I know this Muslim guy, he prays 5 times a day, and he's a horrible guy, and he steals our lunch from the fridge or whatever at work, and he swears, and and whatever. Okay, yeah, he's praying. It's between him and Allah, his prayer's accepted or not. But maybe he's praying very quickly, no real like conviction in it. So the prayer is not having the effect on him that it should.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, the prayer is not having that on him, and then he's falling into all these different sins, foul language, foul things, then he's also not being successful. He's not from the successful ones.
Exactly. This is very profound. And one thing that comes to my mind here is that what's a connection that's been made is that in that prayer, as we know, that we read a chapter which is obliged upon every praying individual, every Muslim, every believer to read, the chapter called Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening of the Quran. In that we say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, that you alone we worship and you alone we ask for help. So in this prayer itself, we are actually calling out to the one who gave us life to give us what we need in life. Yeah. So this again is linking to that whole element of success in the world and success in the hereafter. We're connecting ourselves and keeping, ourselves connected to the one who gave us life in the first place. So it builds on each other. You understand me? So have belief. Okay, that belief manifests itself into an action. The action, the first of action that was mentioned here, was the prayer.
Yeah.
That prayer connects you again at a deeper level for asking of your needs. And as I mentioned, it takes you away from wrongdoing if you're doing it correctly. And I think that's very profound that, the one whom gives us successes and ultimate success is the one who gave us life in the first place. Exactly. So if you look at it from a worldly perspective or even, in terms of the hereafter or whatever perspective, all success lies in that real or true success lies in what he allows us to attain. You know?
Yeah, I wanted to say, because we don't exclude materialistic success, right?
Exactly.
Just because you now become a Muslim, or now, no, sorry, you cannot. Sorry,
have to live in a box
you
and
gotta live
a mud hut or something,
with some, dirty clothes and all. No, we mean that the purpose of this life is not to attain all this materialistic things or wealth, because at the end of the day, you're gonna leave this life without bringing those things. Like we know in the hadith, like there are 3 things, right? Following the person to his what you call it, the burial or the grave, right? And 2 of them go back and 1 of them stays. The 2 things that go back is his family and wealth, right? And the only thing that stays is his actions, right? So no matter what happened, and also with those actions could have been how you spent your wealth, right? You can be a person that, okay, I have wealth. As long as you spend it in good things, that could be something that can help you in the hereafter. Maybe you help poor people. Maybe you provide it for your family, or you build mosques and all these things.
Wells, or help the poor, and so on and so forth.
And even if you didn't have that wealth and wanted to do that, we know that in Islam, you are rewarded for your intentions, right? And equally, you can be someone who's poor and who wish, if he would have money, he would do all the crazy things. So it also comes down to, why are you doing things? What's your intention? Why are you here? What's your purpose? Are you just gonna waste the whole, your life here? And like Allah talks a lot about the people that, wasted life, that they sold the hereafter for the dunya, right? Right. Yeah. And sold his forgiveness for the punishment. Those are the people that, like, if you see the parallel, you can be successful and unsuccessful in the eyes of God. And it's not about what you have in your pockets. It's about the actions you do, the belief you had. Like we said, like, it's not only being a Muslim, but going to the next level, being a mu'min, and having this focus in your prayer and this connection with God.
And I think what you said there, you highlighted something that I found very interesting, is that you said that you go from stages, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the stages, as we know from the famous narration, it's called the narration of Gabriel, the narration of Jibreel, where he mentions the levels of Islam, Islam, Iman, Ihsan.
Yeah.
Here we see, something very profound as well. We see the levels when we look at belief as a system. We see that first a person believes in their heart, and then they manifest that belief on their tongue. And then after that tongue, they move to their actions, and then from the actions to their behavior. And we know that that's the functionality of the 5 pillars. It goes on to different actions. Here we're seeing in that verse, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. This is now the prayer. So we've got the belief system which manifests inside ourselves. We've testified to that belief, and now it's manifesting now in our actions. And then the next thing is, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ, that they are the people who stay away from idle speech, not only engaging in it, but listening to it. So now we see the actions in behavior and environment. It's the same sort of, stepping stones. We have an internal belief, we manifest it on our tongue, we show it on our actions, and then we look at our behavior in society. So here this verse is talking about now, which is step number 3. How is our behavior in society? Are we people who gossip, backbite, lie, just waste time with the speech? And are we people who listen to, give ear to those type of things? I think this is fundamentally one of the greatest, one of the really great tips that we can take in the modern age, 2024, right? Which is that, they say, or a lot of psychologists say, be careful what you give your ear to, because it impacts your own thoughts and your actions.
Right.
So be careful whom you sit with and what you take from them, because it can actually mess with your psychology, right? And your actions. But here we have God the Almighty saying already, be careful with this speech, what you come from your mouth and what you listen to, because if I come out with idle speech, someone's going to have to listen to it, right?
Yeah.
And who listens to it, I might affect them and impact them in a negative way. And that negative way that I've impacted them will actually impact me negatively, because I've encouraged them towards that negativity, right?
Yeah.
But if I also listen to negativity, it's going to impact me and the way I act and behave. So it's a very, very important, profound point here on number 3. What do you think?
I mean, the thing is, nowadays as well, it's no longer just verbal, is it? It's online. What's written online has become the new form of speech.
Yeah.
They even call it online speech, right?
Mm.
This is a problem because how many rumors get spread around?
Yeah.
And how many, even deaths, murders, people being killed because of a rumor that was spread, which was false.
So,
Sometimes turmoil in the country because a rumor was spread and passed around, wasn't even true. No one verified what it was because they didn't just pay attention to this idle talk. They shared it across social media platforms.
Exactly.
This is a big problem.
Yeah.
And we find people sharing all kinds of stuff.
Mm.
You know, something comes, share. You see how many social media things we see are shared now with videos as well, and
Yeah.
they're not even true or they're fake or this. They share it and say this is this and it's not this.
Mm.
yeah.
And a lot of trouble is caused.
Yeah.
Because they're not only, you know, like the verse says, that the ones who stay away, they turn away.
Turn away, exactly.
Like give it, you know, don't even like pay attention to it.
Exactly.
So this is a big problem
Very
everyone's facing.
And you know, and going back to that point of human psychology is that I don't know if any of you guys have found it, but something someone says to you can stick with you, and kind of, it kind of develops a thought. You know, we say hum in Arabic, right? A thought that comes in your mind that if you don't kill it or squash it quickly, it develops into something more than that thought, and then all of a sudden, you know, you got a problem at home, for example. You know, and I remember a story a long time ago that I heard about one of the, you know, sisters or women in the community heard about a way that one of the other women in the community was greeting her husband. You know, come home, she would greet him at the door, she would, you know, be pleasant towards him and so on and so forth. And she kind of said, "Oh, why would you do that? Why would you do that?" Impacted that woman's action that day. She didn't do it. And her husband came home and was very angry. I can't remember the full picture of the story, but I remember my teacher telling me the story, and there was some message behind it. But it was again coming back to giving ear to that idle speech, or being even involved in that idle speech yourself, because that resonated in that woman to produce an action.
100%.
And we see that nowadays, like as you said, with the false flag media or false flag news, that you've spread something or you've been involved in something that actually ends up impacting millions of lives, thousands of lives, even one life, even countries. Yeah. And then that really will hinder, if you look at it from a worldly perspective. Now we're saying ultimate success is what God the Almighty has laid out, right? But we're saying, let's look at it from a worldly perspective. Now I want to run for a certain position in the environment, and I am known for idle speech. They're going to say, no, this is the guy who spreads gossip.
Yeah.
This is the guy who's always spreading false news. We can't trust in what he says, you know, or whatever. His decisions are not quite accurate because of how what he hears has affected his judgment. So again, if we look at it from a worldly perspective, even a religious perspective, this message that we're getting from God the Almighty really does impact us. So it is a step that we should definitely give attention to.
Another thing, like what I've thought when you said that, the one thing I thought about was when I became a new Muslim, and you know, I think because we're talking about from a perspective, general perspective, but I think this applies to Muslims as well. Like we got some groups of Muslims, like they fall into this with one another. We don't even have to talk about, you know, the countries, and I think within ourselves we can say things to other people, and we, you know, like this concept of giving advice in Islam is such a big concept, and you should be really careful, because if you you could be giving the right advice to the right person at the wrong time, and that person won't accept it, and you know, it might even put this person or you know, create a distance between the person and the religion of Islam. You see a lot of new reverts, they come into religion, and you know, people going all in on them. I don't know if that would fall in under this, but I know one of my teachers in the university, he said, like, being a student of knowledge, the most important thing is to be quiet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the biggest virtue you can have.
Yeah.
And I know also many scholars that said half of the knowledge is saying, I don't know.
I don't know. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to go into that point, is that
Right.
we have many of the great scholars who say that, you know, if you're 100% sure, okay, speak. If you're 99.9%, I don't know.
And this is so hard today.
Yeah.
Like today, like you just talk, just talk, and you're saying a lot of things that you cannot maybe, like you said, verify in the moment. And I think being around people like these scholars, or being around people that have this wisdom of be quiet when you need to, because we've lost it. Like if you look at the, back in the days, like when you were a young kid, be quiet, listen to the older people.
Yeah.
Like obviously just because you're young doesn't mean you cannot talk, but
there's a
certain respect towards, knowledge and being quiet and being respectful. And just now today is lost.
This is like, we know that the message of the Holy Quran came down, a revelation upon the heart of the Prophet Muhammad, who peace and blessing be upon him, who shared it with his companions, and now we have it today by transmission. He also explains the Quran.
Yep.
And there is, a profound narration where he mentioned the translation of that those who believe in God the Almighty and the last day, let them always speak good or remain silent. Yeah, keep their mouth closed. So this is very, very profound, that we see these kind of connections between things. And we know in this day and age, the most worldly successful people are people who, generally speaking, have a certain demeanor, manner, concept with life. They're not over exaggerating in everything they're saying. They take time to ponder and reflect. I remember listening to a podcast or some information about Margaret Thatcher, and she had the time after 4 a.m. in the morning, she would read till certain, and she would speak very little, and she would speak, these certain things, and you see that these are the things that they believed and perceived that would help them in their journey. We see it a lot in society, and we see the opposite is true. And here we know this is a profound divine wisdom sent from the heavens to us to act upon. So just to recap, we have step number 1, which is belief. We have step number 2, which is being a heart present when we are supplicating and asking from Almighty God in our prayer. Step number 3, being away from all idle speech, coming from our mouth or listening to it. Then he says, الذين هم والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون. No, sorry, not فاعلون. What's the next ayah? Yes. So here, God the Almighty, he mentions the translation of, and they are the ones who purify themselves. Zakat, they purify themselves. And what is meant by the purification here? We're talking about purification in giving charity, or purifying them in a different way. I'm going to ask the one of knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But
see, I don't know, have a knowledge.
We're gonna put.
Here, obviously, was referring to the paying the zakah, which is an obligatory charity for those who reach a certain threshold on their wealth to the poor. And you can see why it's successful there, because you can imagine now. Imagine if everybody in the world, forget now, not everyone's Muslim, just imagine everybody in the world said, let's implement this zakah concept. So all those people who reach a certain threshold, which is probably, I think in the UAE, it's about 17,000 dirhams, maybe in pounds, it's probably what? 3.5, 4 pounds, a bit low now, but 3.5, 4.
Yeah.
If everybody who had those kind of savings they haven't touched for a whole year, or they had a property that they weren't living in, whatever, it's those kind of categories, too many to go into right now, but they were to take from that and give that 2.5% directly to the poor, then we would see in a large scale poverty would be reduced. But how many in reality of those people who could be millionaires, billionaires, some of them you hear about them doing something, but how many of those people don't necessarily give a lot of charity, or they do now and again, but it's not consistent. If everybody was to give this 2.5%, that would solve a lot of the financial issues in society. When people generally have money in their pocket, they don't think of, not that it's an excuse, but they don't fall into things like crime because they feel like they have to get money from somewhere else. They don't also fit into that concept of complaining and being displeased with what God Almighty has provided for them. So from that perspective, they are successful because they are providing as well. They're doing an obligation of Islam, obviously, but they're also solving. They're helping the poor. They're giving charity to the needy. That has a knock-on effect on a good positive effect on society. So again, that is an element of true success.
Yeah, we mentioned it before. And the funny thing is, like, it's not like we come from the West. They tax us on 30, 40, 50%, right? And you still see these people being homeless, being, alcohol abuse, but you're talking about 2.5%. That's nothing.
It's nothing,
right? So you still can keep 97.5%. So it's not like, give all your wealth. You obviously, if you give more, it's good.
It's good.
But I really like that concept.
And do you know about that concept that really, I love about this concept is that if you go into some of the books of the people who explained the deeper meanings of the Holy Quran, they mention on this verse that this action actually acts as a purification for oneself from within, internally, right? Because when you give, it does something to your heart, right? And when you give, it does something to your mindset, your mind state. It actually frees you from that materialism. And when you're freed from a materialism, if you look at the world in 2024, people are doing things for materialism that are unspeakable. But if you free yourself from that, you've got a great perception to turn away from things that are very detrimental to people's health, your own health, and the environment that you're in. So what you're doing is you're helping the community and the environment. Definitely, as you mentioned, stop crime, people, a mother who's concerned about how a child's going to eat, she can't focus, she can't concentrate. It's just something that's natural for her. So you're helping this society, but at the same time, you're doing something for yourself internally. You're clearing your mind from this sense of, I need all of these things and hold on to them and so on and so forth, which normally leads people to greed, to gluttony, all these things which are very, very negative characteristics, I remember once, I remember seeing a situation where there was a gentleman on the floor. I think it was a woman. I can't remember which gender, but they were on the floor. And they were struggling, and people were stepping over this person. And I stopped and I pondered, and I obviously, as a Muslim, I want to stop and help. But I stopped before helping, and I pondered, what has society come to that we would step over someone in need? And that's the whole thing about the self-purification as well, is that when you think from that perspective of how can I give back to the community, it should spark that feeling that I'm not just going to step over somebody, for example, and I'm not going to stand on someone definitely in order to get my personal gain. Rather, I'm going to give back to this community. So I think this is a very, very, again, every step is profound, but number 4 is definitely profound from a perspective of communal cohesion. And we look at normally humanitarian efforts. We look at, things going on, and, people like Mother Teresa are praised for her humanitarian efforts and so on and so forth. Here we have one of the greatest humanitarian efforts we can do, which 100%. Is that we give to the community and support it. And that's one of the steps to attaining true success. And if you look on the verse that comes after it, here now is something which I find is absolutely transformative if we actually internalize it. So God the Almighty mentions a translation of, and they are the ones who guard their private parts, except for the ones whom they are lawful for. Look at society. Look at the widespread of disease, and that disease that is actually impacting the life of many. Look at the home people who don't know who their mothers are, fathers are, broken homes. Look at the even families that are being broken up because people have gone outside of their marital bed and they've gone and done other things. We see that this principle here, it would transform society quite massively. From a very, very large scale. I think I was watching once this documentary, and the professor who's a professor of human psychology, he said that most or majority of people who commit crimes are from broken homes or from some sort of family disrupted background. Now we're not saying all families are like that, but I'm saying that generally they found that this was the higher percentage. And here God the Almighty is saying to us, you want true success, then protect yourself in your relationships. And we also see that people who pass from relationship to relationship, who are seeking love, care, on whatever it might be, affection, they are ending up in more psychological trauma because of these failed experiences.
Yep.
You know, I don't know if you can shed some more light on that, my brother.
Oh, you've covered it quite well. I was going to say the same thing, that, you know, like when you don't guard your chastity and there's this sleeping around concept, one, morally wise, it should be, okay, someone can say it's enjoyable, for example, but morally wise, I mean, hopefully most people, they kind of, if you sat them down and they really think about it, it's not the right thing to do. Keep jumping around. It's not really respectful. But I was going to say, like you mentioned, that the knock-on effect is these having children out of wedlock. The woman getting pregnant, she doesn't know who the father is. So there is an element there, well, again, quote, in quote, 2024, but there is an element of shame to that, because this woman doesn't, you know, she's like, oh, I slept with about 5 guys. Who's the father? So most people, they kind of say, oh man, why did I do that? They start to think, you know, this was not the right thing to do. Maybe they don't even, some people, unfortunately, now they don't even care. But again, there is exception to the rules. So we're not painting everybody with the same brush. But like you said, statistic-wise, we know that a lot of people who don't have a healthy father and mother situation, it may be that this woman got pregnant and the father's involved with the child, so he's in the child's life. But majority of the case, it's not the case. So he has one parent. There's no father, no authoritative figure. We see many of those children, they grow up, they get to that age where they're looking for, they need authority. They may rebel a bit sometimes, but they need someone to put the foot down. A manly kind of authoritative figure. It's not there. It can lead to to broken societies, crime, what do they call it? Teenage delinquents.
Yeah.
So this is reality behind it. So again, if people guard their chastity, they do it in the right way, they get married, they have a family structure involved, that again has a knock-on effect on society and is better for society. So again, these are the ones who are truly successful.
Yeah.
I remember it was a long time ago, I read something about the greatest empires, right? And the fall of, like, the reason why they fell. And one of the reasons, I know this professor, he mentioned, was when a society reach a point where, you know, the people in general become, the modesties like frown upon, and it's becoming a normality to sleep around and to have engage in relationships, sexual relationship with many people. And you said, Ismail, like, with these desires leading to other desires that are, even crazier.
Far-fetched.
Yeah. And that's why you see, like, these great empires started to fall because of, and it's really interesting when you look at it in today, you look at, generally you see how people living in the West and connect that with all the other things, consequences of that lifestyle. We see antidepressant never been this, the usage never been that high. I'm looking in Sweden, 3/4 of all women are on antidepressant. That's a crazy number, and why is that? It's not only because, okay, yeah, sure, if you would be a believer and have these things, but also I think, like, the women are being abused in today's society, in the Western society, being used as a sort of objectified. Exactly. It's a commodity, or how you call it, like commodity. Yeah. Being used as a commodity and having no self-respect, no honor. Whereas in Islam, we are honoring the woman in this way, and I think, like, the woman is like half of the society. Yeah, you see, so
she's the bedrock of society, and the reality here is that we're not only just, this principle doesn't just honor the lady, the woman, the husband, the children. It honors the sanctity of relationships.
Yep.
If you look at it from that perspective as well, it's like, the relationship itself is something precious, and it's not just to be given to everybody else.
No.
It's not something that's on, like, and I always use this example, and some people look at me like, yeah, they get it. Some people look at me like, but if I ask you right now, give me your bank card and give me your PIN, you're going to say no. I don't know who in the world is going to say, yeah, here you go, no problem. Yeah. But the reality is you're going to say no because you value that thing and you want to protect it. So I use that analogy and say, but you don't value and protect your wife with the same level of protection. Now, I'm not likening her to the bank account, but I'm saying that we protect these things, but we've lost the sanctity and protection of this relationship, our spouses. But what the Almighty is telling us, no, protect your private parts only with those whom you're lawful to engage them with. And the reality here is something that I want to also delve in a bit deeper with, is that when you have that level of relationship with another human being, the worldly stresses become very light and easier to deal with. Because when you feel stressed and you go home to your household and you know that that person is with you, there's a trust element there. There's no sense of distrust, for example. You feel confident to lie in the lap of your spouse and let your inhibitions out, to let your sadness out, and to really know that they're going in the right hands, and we all have that. And I think that's why you see, no matter what the cycle you're in, the people in the world are looking for that, and that's why they're jumping from one to another. But something else very profound that I've experienced as well is that what happens is there is a disattachment at a deeper level with our children. Because, and what I mean by that is that when people do get together, their idea is that because we're together, children is a thing that we're supposed to do, right? But they don't have that honor for the family structure in the way it's supposed to be, or the viewpoint of it. It's like, we're together, we're doing what we're doing, children is probably the next thing that we should do. And what happens is the mothers and the fathers don't have the connection with their children, even if they're in a marital home, because the marriage is not seen for the sacred bond as it should be. It's just seen as, we'll do it if we do it, we don't do it, we don't do it. And that has a really big knock-on effect. And I've seen my own self, a mother ask the nanny what her daughter likes or is her favorite color or what favorite food is. And I was profoundly shocked. You don't know your daughter like that. It's very, very profound. Very, very profound. So moving on, and again we recapped. We said that قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون. And the translation of that is, successful indeed are the believers. They are the ones who are conscious in their prayer. They are the ones who purify themselves with staying away from foul speech and idle speech. They give their charity and they protect their private parts. And then the next verse he mentions God the Almighty, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَأَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. They are the people who uphold their promises. Now imagine this as a next step of success. We're number 6, right? Number 6?
I think so,
yeah, number 6, because I know the last one, it goes back to the prayer again. But number 6, holding on to your promises. And what does this say? Or what is this? What volumes does this speak? I want to give it to you now. What volumes does this condition speak to the people who may be listening?
Yeah, well, if you translate the verse, you can translate it as well. Like promises or trusts. When you're giving a trust. So again, imagine if people are trusted with something, and they don't keep the trust. If that was something that was prevalent in society, again, what would happen in society and the world if people kept breaking promises? They're given a trust and they go against that trust. So again, there's this whole idea of being honest, being a trustworthy person, being someone who you can trust. This is a very important aspect of society, and this is a very important character in the believer. So again, God Almighty Allah saying here that those people who are truly successful are the ones who are trustworthy and don't break the promises. And we know the problem. Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that the signs of a hypocrite are 3. And he said, if he speaks, he lies.
If he quarrels.
Yeah, if he quarrels, he always goes that extra, he goes over the top. And one of them was there's different narrations, but one of them was that if he is
gives his trust, he breaks it.
That if he is given in trust, he breaks that trust, or he transgresses, or he's like a traitor to that trust.
Traitor.
So this is an important. If we look at all these characteristics, we will look at them one by one. If everybody was like humble in their prayers, we mentioned has a knock-on effect on how they should genuinely live their life and be with people.
Exactly.
If they avoid idle speech, that stops all that thing of gossiping and backbiting, spreading rumors that can lead to big,
Exactly.
corrupt mischief in the world, as they say. If they guard their chastity, we already mentioned that. So you can see all these things, when you put them together, it's like an ideal thing on how to be a truly successful person. Now, if you at the same time can have riches and wealth and be a Forbes top 50 company, great. Islam doesn't say become, for lack of better words, a monk, don't get married. No, Islam says live a normal life, but within the boundaries that the Almighty has set for you.
Exactly.
So if you can be successful in this, but know that if you're successful in this, but you're not successful in these points that is being mentioned, you're not truly successful. That's the point we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
True success is if you have all these things here, but you don't have success quote unquote in the worldly life, in materialistic things, then you can be rest assured that you are really a successful man and not that billionaire.
Exactly.
So we can see here all these steps.
And you know what's really profound in what you just mentioned is that if you look at it now from an analytical standpoint, as you mentioned, all these things affect ourselves and our community. Now, let's put it in perspective for those people listening who might be thinking that I come here for 7 steps, and those 7 steps aren't linked to the world at all, really. They're linked to society and me and whatever. But let's now say,
but
okay,
that makes the world a better place, right?
Exactly what I was going to get onto.
If society is in harmony, people's relationships in harmony, if everyday life is free of the major strife and problems and corruption and evil and lying and stealing and backbiting and this guy sleeping with this guy's 16-year-old daughter, whatever it may be, all these things, if the world is a better place, then that is the world, right?
Exactly. And the point I was just going to make mention on that is now that's, say I'm a businessman, I want to go into my business world, and I look at those characteristics and how I can practically implement them. Firstly, you're going to see the one that we stopped on last, which is that if I'm trustworthy, people are going to come back to my business. If I'm upholding the trust with my, for example, customers or the people who buy into me, it's going to spread my business faster. I mean, all of us in this room, I can guarantee, and all those listening have that feeling of that when they buy something from a shop, how they were treated, the customer service, the transparency, they go back there, even if it's more expensive. And I'm one of those people. I don't know about you guys, but 100%. I'm one of those people that I will go back to the more expensive merchant because of how his or her characteristics was of 100%, trust 100%. And reliability. And and one thing I also want to bring to the table here is that as the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he said that all of the sons and daughters of Adam make mistakes, and the best of those who make mistakes are those who repent often. We're not saying that as human beings you have to be perfect or you're going to be perfect. We all make mistakes. We all may have broken a trust here or there, but we're saying that if we're striving to uphold them, life is going to be a better place. And now let's put that back into the perspective of a businessman. I go into the world where I'm going to do trade or whatever else. I haven't got that fear factor of the people who I'm going to trade with taking my money.
Scamming.
They're being scamming. The laws inside of my workplace where we have this kind of, it's called a Sexual Abuse Act or whatever it is, it wouldn't be present because the etiquettes and the dealings of the staff in the workplace is not going to get me lawsuits, because now you have companies that have to protect themselves from lawsuits because why? This illicit behavior. And I remember as a profession, I'm an educator, and I remember one of the contracts I signed recently for a college was to not get into an illicit relationship with one of the students. And I was stuck on, when I say stuck on this question, I wasn't stuck on signing it. I was stuck on what is the world come to that
you need
this
to have it.
is inside of the contract. So again, if we're looking at it from a business perspective, this will clean up the whole environment in which we're coming to work in. So that's, I think that's really, a practical way of looking at it, is that, as you said, the world is a better place, a safer place, a more coherent place. Then business is going to be more safer, coherent, and more it will thrive and flourish more. So again, that's step number 6. Step number 7, called the Almighty mentions a translation of, they are the people who safeguard their prayer. So now we saw in the beginning the ones who have attentive, concentration, focus in the prayer.
Yeah.
But it says here, hafidun, that they are the ones who like protect it, safeguard it. the prayer.
Meaning that they diligently kind of observe it. Like they continuously, they're always doing those prayers. So we mentioned, the what Islam says about the prayer keeping you away from. So we mentioned that to get the beauty of the prayer is to have this humbleness, this concentration, this focus, this sincerity in the prayer, this humility, this tranquility.
The quality of it.
Yeah. But it's not enough that you just have one prayer a day like this. No,
Exactly. That's
it ends on the fact. So
exactly
your humbleness, all these other factors, and it ends here
on the completion of it all.
But you must be regulating these prayers
Exactly to achieve that.
So to be able to like achieve all this humility and tranquility properly, and all the knock-on effects positively it has, you have to be one who's regularly observing them. Otherwise, you won't truly be of those who are successful.
Yeah.
And one thing that's just comes to my mind: what's the most important characteristic of a successful person? Is basically consistency. And that's why you see a hadith where the Prophet mentioned that the most beloved deeds or the best deeds in another narration are those that are done consistently,
even if they're small.
Even if they're few and small. Yeah. And you see like anything, like you see successful people, if it's in sports, in business, they've done it a long time, like 10 plus years.
Exactly.
And imagine and see this Allah is providing us, okay, you want to be successful, you have all these things you got to do, but ends up with be consistent.
Yeah.
That's the
and that's exactly what you're saying. It's very profound, is that if we look at as you mentioned here, rounds up with the consistency on the prayer. Look at the prayer itself is in the second verse, or it's mentioning about the internal affairs with the prayer.
Yeah.
And here, as Ismail mentioned, it's now the external affairs of the prayer as well as the internal, right? But the consistency. The prayer isn't the prayer without the things that come before it and after it. You have to prepare yourself. You have to make the ablution, the spiritual cleansing of oneself. You have to prepare the place of the prayer, the time of the prayer, the amount of the prayer itself, and the function within inside of the prayer, and the completion of the prayer. And as you mentioned and highlight here, this is extremely profound, because this is real successful people. They are concerned with all of the mechanics of life. It's not just one element of life. And here God the Almighty is reminding us about these type of mechanics with the prayer. And we normally hear from the scholars that the prayer, if it's prayed on its right time, should impact the person's life to be diligent with time and diligent with those type of actions, right? So this is just profound the way it's wrapped up, and I just think to myself that, as you highlighted and as we highlighted, these are the true elements of success. And does that mean that all of the sub branches that we don't live? No. I think everything, as you've kind of highlighted, leads back to those sub branches, because if you have these things in check, the sub branch is going to come easy, right? So if I'm preparing myself for prayer, ablution, X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to prepare myself for work. I'm going to get dressed. I'm going to be on time. I'm going to do the job, right? So it's the same sort of concept. So if you look at it from a practical perspective, all of these things are practically directing you to do the best things in life.
There are two things I want to mention though. There's a book called Willpower. And in this book, there's like a professor who talks about the effect of willpower on one area that will affect other areas. And that's exactly what you said, right? And you can indeed see when someone is inclined towards being lazy, let's say. And I've seen this, subhanAllah, like with my fitness clients. The first thing when we talk about before even starting a program is analyzing the behavior they have. So they say, I'm lazy. Okay. You're lazy, and this leads to what? Yeah, I'm not taking care of my health. Okay, I'm not really taking care of my prayers. Okay, what's the consequence of that? Yeah, I feel quite depressed,
exactly.
and it's not going well with my relationship or whatever. You see all these things.
A knock-on effect.
Yep. Exactly. And then I was thinking about, when we talked about this, what is the best way to teach a human being these principles. Like not everyone can start a business, right? How would you teach someone to be successful? You know, he cannot start a business, or it's, you know, that's the beauty of Islam. You can learn these characteristics and qualities, and you can be a child, adult, you can be poor, you can be rich. It doesn't matter. Everyone can pray. Everyone can do these things. Everyone can protect their private parts. Everyone can give from what they have. Everyone can do it. Not everyone can start a business. Not everyone can start an Instagram page and become famous. Not everyone can practice those qualities through those doors, but everyone can practice those qualities through the doors of Islam, to, you know, the beauty of Islam, the religion of Islam, because it's for every place, every time, and all people. That's so beautiful.
So beautiful. And what I find that is a great emphasis of how this is truly successful, these qualities, these 7 things that we mentioned, is that when God the Almighty mentions he mentions that these people will enter into Firdaus. We know is the highest place in paradise. They will enter into the highest place of paradise, again emphasizing that this place that the world religions agree that we're trying to strive for is true success. And these people with these qualities, characteristics, will enter into that beautiful place in paradise, highest ranks of paradise. I think this again emphasizes the importance for us to give attention to these 7 steps, to really focus on them. And if we just, like, for example, take one, I mean, I wouldn't say like one a year, but if we take one and look at it, you know, at a certain period of time and try to develop it itself, is going to be profound transformation in the people's life. Because you'll find that the relationships with people becomes better. You'll find that your business transactions will come smoother. And, you know, you might analyze it and say, I know now why I'm falling short in these areas. Is because I've actually taken on too many trusts, for example, and I'm not able to keep up with them. So now I can see from a perspective of, if I'm going to be truly successful, I have to fill my trust. I can't fulfill 20 trusts. I can fill 5. You know, it will start to streamline everybody's life.
And I doubt there's anyone out there that's listening and thinking, I've checked all of them. I'm perfect. It's always going to be something we can work on. There's always going to be someone, but I have no problem, you know, with idle speech. I'm quiet, I'm doing my thing, but then he falls into other shortcomings, so he can fix that. So also here, you like Allah also can, he puts it like in front of us, a checklist, if you can say that, like, okay, even if you got some things going on that, you know, it works for you, you're doing it well, here's some things you can fix, because we always need to fix something. We're not, like you said, كل بني آدم خطاء. All of us, the children of Adam, we make mistakes. So fix those mistakes.
Exactly.
SubhanAllah.
I think this is extremely profound, and some of the benefits you've all shared are fascinating, actually. And I hope the viewers have actually, you know, grabbed those concepts and pondered over them. And in fact, maybe even watch this episode and stop for a minute and pause and just ponder over what's been discussed. Because what we're saying here, and what I want to wrap up and conclude by saying, or kind of, you know, wrap up by saying, is that it's all about perception. If you get your perception right in light of the one who knows what's right, you'll find that every element, aspect of your life will serve that perspective. So you see people now starting up YouTube channels and doing whatever they're trying to do because they think this is success, and when they don't achieve it, depression. And then you see people who've achieved it, don't get what they want, depression. You know, so you see both ends of the spectrum in this sense of, and then some people say, no, but I'm floating between the middle. But the reality is, we're saying all of it comes back to what the perception of the human beings is focused on. And we see in this world that we live in today, we are very much in need of the correct perspective to engage with each other with peace, to live with one another in harmony, to clean up the society in which we live in. And I mean, how is it possible that in a world today we can witness the killing, the murders, the robbing, the whatever is going on, and just sit down happily and peacefully? It's because the perspective is not correct and not accurate. And here God the Almighty has given us clear perspective. If you want to be believers and you want success, this is the way to success. And I don't know if you want to say any few words to wrap it up, or we're in a good position to wrap it.
I think we're good to wrap it up, inshallah.
So there you go. For those listening, This is a profound chapter in the Holy Quran. It's called the chapter of the believers. And God the Almighty, He mentions قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِزَكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. And to the end of the 7 verses. I won't go on to all of them, but the 7 steps are: those who believe, those who are conscious in their prayer, those who are staying away from idle speech, engaging it and listening to it, those who purify themselves by giving charity and purifying their inner self, those who protect their private parts and what they're doing with their private parts, those who uphold their trusts, and those who guard and safeguard the mechanics, the actions as it relates to the prayer. And this is a challenge from the one who knows best, the one who gave us this very life that we have. And if we are really striving for a good place in the hereafter that we're all guaranteed to have, death is guaranteed for all of us. If we're really striving, then here is the 7 steps to attain that success.